And my hunch is now that we live in this post-pandemic world, we're trying to kind of work through what's work life mean to us. So many people now are working virtually. Do you think that has made this idea of career purpose more important, less important, or about the same?
I think if I could use a different word, I think there's more of a focus on it now.
Okay. Say more about that.
I think it's always been important. If you go back really far in history, it's kind of like, well, I don't care what your career purpose is. We got cows to milk at 5 a.m. Like, you know what I mean? But now with the information and the access that we have and the possibilities and the types of jobs that are available, I think it's been important, but the kind of environment and the system that we had going didn't allow for as much of a focus on it. Whereas when the pandemic hit, what I saw happening was a lot of people who were maybe afraid to leave a position earlier, or even have a conversation with their manager about tweaking their role slightly, suddenly either found themselves laid off or rethinking life in a bigger way. And so it opened up more opportunity to have those conversations and to focus on what matters. That's not the only thing that caused the Great Resignation and the quiet quitting, but I think it's definitely something that came into much greater focus with the massive changes that we all experienced.
Yeah. So now I agree with you completely. And the nice thing that you said is it opens up new opportunities and possibilities.
Right.
That now maybe if I really always wanted to live in a certain part of the country, I might actually be able to do that and still keep the job I have right now.
That's right.
And I could figure out a way to make that work. So there's more flexibility, more options on the menu.
Yes.
So now I want to take our conversation and move it a little bit towards the leadership angle.
Okay.
So why is it so important that leaders think about this question of purpose for themselves rather than just do the job? What's the role that purpose plays for leaders?
I think it's motivation. It's getting the best out of your employees. This is why we have quiet quitting, right? And I would imagine most of your audience is familiar with that, but just the idea of showing up to work and doing the minimal necessary. You're paid a certain amount, you go, you do your job, you do it well, and you come home. And the problem for me is that there's such a missed opportunity there, because your employees may be going home and they're enjoying their family and their hobbies, and that's where they're getting their sense of enjoyment. And then they're dreading Monday and surviving to Friday. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a bad job. It's just that if it's not connected to a sense of purpose, something bigger than them, an impact that they can have, that wouldn't require changing the entire job or necessarily moving them to another team, although that's an option. But even just tiny tweaks, or even one of the things that we've talked about at the Leadership Foundry is the why ladder, right?
Yeah.
Even just as simple as getting on paper or on a whiteboard, why do we come to work every day? Okay, why does that matter? Why does that matter? And why does that matter? And eventually, no matter what you're doing, you get to something like impacting people's lives. And even just teasing that out, even if you don't change the job at all, gives people a sense of, oh, you know what? I'm coming to work today and I'm changing people's lives. I'd be more motivated to go to that job than the one where I'm, just doing some small administrative task, right? Even if it's just a reframe, that increases engagement and motivation. And I'd rather have the team that's engaged and motivated. I don't know about you.
Yeah, totally. So there's an interesting contradiction in our whole conversation here. And the contradiction is this. We're talking about finding your career purpose. So you can have your purpose, so you can be more fulfilled and more focused and more motivated and find more meaning. And yet, the irony in all this conversation is the best purposes are not about you, right? They're about some need in the world that we're trying to meet. How we're helping customers or helping the world in some way or doing something for someone else.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any comments around that, but it's an interesting irony, because when we think about quiet quitting, there's a lack of purpose in that job. I'm doing just the bare minimum to get by. But when there's a sense of purpose, you're getting paid and you want to get paid fairly. But sometimes you do things beyond what you're getting paid because you feel such a sense of calling to what you're doing. We see a lot of that in say, the nonprofit space or teachers in
Yes.
public schools, where people go above and beyond what they're getting paid to do because they're so drawn to that particular mission or vocation. So
Exactly.
I don't know if you have any thoughts about that interesting irony, because it is such a contradiction.
I think it's very true, and it just makes me think of Brandon, you were one of the first people that made me think about this topic, because many years ago, I don't know if you remember, but you put out some content around figuring out what your purpose is. One of the questions you asked is, what makes you mad or sad in the world? Or what did you need growing up and not get? Or what did mom and dad need growing up and not get?
Oh, you remember all these questions, Ashley. That was a long time ago.
It was kind of an important topic to me. And I remember sitting there journaling and thinking about this and trying to figure this out. Guys, it's not an easy thing that you can just figure out today necessarily. I mean, if you can, that's fabulous. But it's something that's very difficult to think through. And so I think it's a really important point that you're making, is that and I'll put it this way, one way that when I'm giving talks about this, one thing that I inspire people to think about is what I would call a peak or a valley moment in your life. So where you felt one of the greatest joys you've ever felt, and how can you give that same joy to others?
Oh, wow.
Or one of the greatest pains, maybe, and how you can help others prevent that kind of pain in their life. Those are gold when it comes to purpose. That gives us an immense sense of fulfillment when we think about those.